Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel. April 12th, 2018.
The Kuhner Report is powered by Kelly Financial Services. Cleaning up your financial bull. Get the peace of mind that you deserve at Kelly Financial Services.
105 here on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer, cleaning up the liberal bull. I've got an important column up on WRKO.com/Kuhner. Kuhn as in Nancy, ER. Please, I'm urging all of you in Kuhner country, read it, pass it on to your friends, family members, colleagues. You just go to WRKO.com/Kuhner, click on menu, Kuhner's Corner. My column, Trump must fire Mueller. And I lay out the reasons why and why now Mueller's escalation of his war against Trump poses a mortal threat to his presidency and to our constitutional republic. I have all of that there. Please, I'm urging all of you, if you can, read it and send it out. I'll continue to take your calls, I promise. 617-266-6868. However, it now appears increasingly likely that by this weekend, some kind of a military response from the United States, along with Britain and France, will be leveled at Syria in the wake of the chemical weapons attack last weekend in the outskirt town of Douma, outside of the capital of Damascus. However, as we now get geared up for either a military strike, a missile strike, or a massive bombing campaign, and we don't know exactly yet what option Trump is going to choose. What we do know is that the generals around the president, as well as the National Security Advisor John Bolton, are recommending a crippling bombing campaign along with Tomahawk cruise missiles that they want to utterly demolish Assad's air force and then essentially cripple his ability to wage war in Syria. If that's the option he goes with, that is a war. It's not a pinprick strike, it is a war. Vladimir Putin has now moved Russian soldiers by the thousands into Syria. He is now bringing in more naval vessels towards Syria. He is now stationing Russian troops at key military bases, almost using them as human shields, and warning the Americans, if Russian soldiers are killed, the Russians are going to shoot American planes and American missiles out of the sky. So as the tensions now continue to escalate and escalate, the president is now under increasing pressure to hit Syria, hit Assad, and hit his big protector, Putin, hard. There is, however, one major problem. And it's the problem that I brought up almost immediately after the chemical weapons attack. Why would Assad do this? Is everybody sure that the chemical weapons attack, which did happen, no question about it, it took place, but was it from Assad's side? Or was it a false flag by the Muslim rebels in order to draw in American Western military intervention to save them from their impending defeat? In other words, who committed the atrocity? Did Assad actually use his chemical weapons? This is the mother now of all questions. And on the logical side, and this is why many people are growing more and more skeptical of this coming bombing campaign. Why would Assad do this? He's got 90% of Syria already under his control. He has essentially won the civil war. Every major Islamic stronghold has now fallen. He's now engaged in a mopping up operation with a few pockets of resistance. With him now several weeks away from a total and complete victory, with Trump himself last week publicly announcing we are going to pull all U.S. troops out of Syria, on the verge of victory, he now would launch a chemical weapons attack that killed 40 civilians, injured several hundred, that would risk a massive Western military retaliation that could potentially cost him the war or maybe lead to World War III. It would be the act of a sheer lunatic madman. And now the cracks are beginning to appear. Theresa May, the Prime Minister of Britain, has now admitted that British intelligence cannot confirm that the chemical weapons used, the chlorine gas attack, actually did come from Assad's side. In fact, she had to admit that the Muslim rebels also have stockpiles of chemical weapons. The French intelligence services have now admitted they cannot confirm that the chemical weapons attack came from Assad's side. And then yesterday, at a major meeting with the president, as they had the doors open, giving the reporters a chance to ask a few questions before they went behind closed doors, Secretary of Defense General Mattis, a war hawk who has been calling for a brutal war on Syria, was asked this question: are you 100% sure that Assad, those chemical weapons attack, came from his side and his forces? Listen now to Mattis's stunning acknowledgement. Roll it, Brittany.
Thank you very much.
Have you seen enough evidence that took away the Assad regime for this most recent chemical attack? Have you seen evidence confident to make that assessment?
We're still assessing the intelligence ourselves and our allies. We're still working on this.
Is the U.S. military ready right now to conduct a retaliatory strike if ordered?
We stand ready to provide military options if they're appropriate, as the president determines. But thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Concerned about telegraphing our military moves in Syria?
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Is this an unbelievable admission or what? We're still assessing? In other words, let me translate that for you. We don't know. Or, if you want to give them the benefit of the doubt, we're not sure. We're not 100% sure. We're still assessing. Assessing means we don't have 100% certainty. You're still freaking assessing? Are you kidding me? Look, war should always be the last resort, never the first resort, ever. And when you're committing, potentially, U.S. troops, our boys and our girls, into a potential major Middle Eastern war in which we're going to be arrayed against Assad, against Russia, Putin, Iran, Hezbollah, Shiite militias. Are you kidding me? Over a chemical weapons attack, by the way, which is not in our vital national interest, but let that go. And you're now openly admitting you're not 110% sure that the whole basis for this campaign, the whole basis for this war, i.e. that Assad used these chemical weapons, you're not 100% sure? You're still freaking assessing it? If you're still assessing it, then assess it. Don't saber rattle. Don't start moving in your destroyers and getting your fleet of air fighter jets getting ready to go and bomb. In other words, you better be 1,000% sure before you start dropping bombs on Syria. And to me, what is most incredible, and I think most revealing, is I am now being called, literally, I am now being called a traitor. Because I ask questions about whether we should intervene in Syria. I ask questions about the nature of the chemical weapons attack. And so now what you're hearing from the neoconservatives and from the pro-Hillary warmongers among the Democrats is that the establishment, not wanting to be challenged, not wanting to be questioned, we're all just supposed to bow down and accept whatever they say. Shut up. We know what's good for you. If we want a war, you just stand up and salute like a zombie. Now I'm being called a traitor Now I'm being called an Assad lover. Now I'm being called an agent of Putin. You see? Now I'm acting on behalf of Vladimir. And it's not just me. It's other anti-war critics like Tucker Carlson. And so Tucker Carlson, to his credit, is going against much of the Fox News line. And he's not, rallying around the president on this one. He's actually saying, are you sure that Assad was behind this? Have you looked at the consequences if we do go to war? Have you looked at Iraq? Have you looked at Libya? Have you looked at other places? Why do you think it's going to end any better in Syria? And for simply asking tough, critical, skeptical questions, he's also being attacked as an agent of Vladimir Putin, as an apologist for Bashar Assad, as a traitor to the United States. And so last night, in a remarkable exchange, he was debating a neoconservative, Noah Rothman, a blogger for Commentary Magazine. And Noah Rothman, I read Noah Rothman. He is a complete supporter of the war in Iraq, complete supporter of the war in Libya. He wants a war in Iran, a complete supporter of the Arab Spring. He wants a war in North Korea. He wants a war with China. I mean, these neocons, they never met a war they didn't like. Noah Rothman openly called Tucker Carlson a stooge and a poodle of Putin and Assad and a traitor to the United States. And listen now to Tucker Carlson tell Noah Rothman, whoa. You're telling us that Assad is behind the chemical weapons attack? Listen to what the Secretary of Defense himself just admitted. Roll it, Brittany.
So we have legitimate kind of news on this story. This comes from Reuters. The defense secretary was just asked specifically the question essentially we asked on Monday, the one that you called us traitors for asking, which is, do we know that Assad was behind the gas attack? And this is what the Secretary of Defense just said, quote, we're still assessing the intelligence, ourselves and our allies. We're still working on this. So as with the gas attack last April, the Secretary of Defense, who would know, has not confirmed that we know the Assad government did it. So why am I unpatriotic for asking the same question?
Well, let me say at the outset, I have not called you a traitor. I did not call you unpatriotic. I would not question.
Yes, you did. I have it right here. You called me, and I'm quoting, an ostensibly patriotic American opinion maker who is advancing the geopolitical narratives in defense of a blood-soaked regime that threatens American interests. I'm not attacking you. You were attacking me for asking the most basic of all questions, and it turns out that the Secretary of Defense
Well, I believe your
questions
deserve to be answered, but whether you know it or not, you are advancing pro-Assad narratives, and you should check out Iran TV, Press TV, and the Kremlin-funded network RT to see the favorable coverage you are receiving. I don't believe you're doing that intentionally.
That's irrelevant. No, but hold on. That's irrelevant to the question.
So let's answer the question.
I don't seek that coverage. The Secretary of Defense has been asked twice directly on this, and in neither case did he, in contrast to propagandists like yourself, say unequivocally, we know the Assad government did this. This is not an ancillary question, it's a central question.
Precisely the opposite. In fact, his comments, he made it very clear that he is not questioning the outcome of investigations like that conducted by the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons or the United Nations Joint Investigative Mechanism, which went so far as to say not only do we find this to be sarin in 2017, but Syria was responsible for it. These are investigations that were conducted and very thorough.
It's just incredible. I mean, it really is. So now if you challenge the bombing of Assad, you're an Assad lover. If you challenge a major war in Syria over a false flag operation, now you're a Putin lover. And notice, these are the same people who've learned nothing and forgotten nothing. They've made a mess of the Middle East for the last 16 years, and their strategy is always the same. Their prescription is always the same. War, war, war. And notice how easy it is for them to send your boys and your girls to die in some far-off land. Notice they never volunteer. They're never the first at the front line. But these laptop warriors think that they can have America play God, and somehow we're going to intervene in a 7-year civil war. My friends, enough is enough. President Trump was elected to end our involvement in these endless wars, not to start a new one. The more we ask, the more we find out. The Pentagon itself is not even certain that the Assad regime committed the chemical weapons attack. If they're not 100% certain, we shouldn't be 100% certain. And that means we shouldn't bomb Syria. Period. Full stop. Agree? Disagree? Are we being lied into another war? 617-266-6868. More with your calls. Next.
We're still assessing the intelligence ourselves and our allies. We're still working on this.
123 here on the great WRKO. Liz in Waltham. You're up next. Thanks for holding and welcome.
Thank you, Jeff, for taking my call. Jeff, I'm appealing to you and all the other broadcasters, if you can try to get hold of Trump and put some sense, give him your view. You're an excellent speaker. This is horrible. I don't know if you saw on Tucker Carlson a couple of nights ago, that reporter who said that he outlined it too. He said it's impossible to know who committed this. It's the terrorists. They brag about it. They don't have any problem poisoning the other side. And it's too dangerous to even go there and to check it out. You'll end up in a cage or your head cut off. I wonder about Kuhner, the son-in-law, too, because of this pipeline, with Saudi Arabia, France, and everyone getting involved, and in Israel. Nothing against this. I'm just wondering, are they all behind this? They want to realign the whole Middle East, get rid of, Syria. And by the way, why can't Donald Trump sit down and talk to Assad? He is a medical doctor. He's got brains. This is ridiculous. We're going to war. It's started the Third World War. It's insanity. And I'm just appealing to you, you radio broadcasters, if there's some way, your connections, to get a hold of him, to talk to him, because I'm afraid, because it doesn't look good.
Liz, Liz, thank you very much for that call. Look, I share your concern. I have a very bad feeling about this. Look, he's under tremendous pressure. He is surrounded by the war party. He is surrounded by these war hawks. And look, to me, am I the only one? I'm looking, I guess Tucker and I, we're looking at this, and I'm like, this is the Secretary of Defense, the man who is leading the charge behind the scenes to bomb Syria into the Stone Age. And when told, well, the Russians are going to stand and fight, says, we don't care. That's literally what he's saying in private. We can roll the Russians. So, okay, we can roll Assad, we can roll the Russians, we can roll the Iranians, and then when he's asked publicly by the journalists, well, okay, are you 100% sure Assad is behind the chemical weapons attack? I got to play the clip again. It's going to be the third time, but to me, if this is not revealing, I don't know what is. Play it one more time, Brittany, please.
We're still assessing the intelligence ourselves and our allies. We're still working on this.
You're still assessing? That means you don't know. Or whatever, 80% probability, 90% probability, whatever. In other words, you're not 100% certain. I'm sorry, but now you have no legal, political, or moral basis to launch this bombing campaign. You just don't. And you have the British who are saying the exact same thing, and the French who are privately admitting, no, we don't have the evidence. We don't have the incontrovertible evidence. Well, if you don't have the incontrovertible evidence, wait until you do. My suspicion is they're never going to get the incontrovertible evidence because it was the rebels who committed the chemical weapons attack. That's the only thing that makes sense. And what the media is not talking about, and Jeff Kuhner is maybe the only one who is, who are these rebels in Duma? This final Muslim pocket that hasn't fallen yet. Who are these people? I mean, if we're going to be going to war on their behalf, shouldn't we know who they are and what their goals and objectives are? Well, listen to this. Their name tells you everything you need to know. They are called the Army of Islam. They are directly affiliated with the Al-Nusra Front, which is essentially Syria's version of Al-Qaeda. They even have ISIS fighters embedded within them. Their goal is a radical Sunni fundamentalist state. They openly say that they want to annihilate and exterminate all of their enemies, in particular, the Alawites, who are Shia, they're a sect of the Shia, and the Christians. And their slogan is, the Alawites to the wall, i.e. we massacre all of them, and the Christians to Beirut. In other words, we'll cleanse them and go into neighboring Lebanon, into their capital, Beirut. We're going to go to war for them? So you've got Noah Rothman, who's saying that Tucker and myself, by extension, that we're mouthpieces for the Assad regime. Well, by your logic, you're mouthpieces for Islamic terrorists. I mean, two can play this game. And there's something else. If we're going to get involved in a major war in the Middle East that could drag in potentially Russia, Iran, the great powers, Congress needs to authorize the use of force. I'm sorry, but I'm an old school constitutionalist on issues like war. And if Congress does not give the approval, and I'm telling you they won't, because the American public is decidedly against this war, then it's an illegal, unconstitutional war. Now, Liz, this is not a conspiracy theory. These are facts. Saudi Arabia, they're a big Sunni power. They want Assad out. Turkey, a big Sunni power. They want Assad out. The Gulf sheiks, they want Assad out. The War Party here in Washington, they want Assad out. McManiac, Lindsey Graham, Hillary Clinton, all of them, they have been itching, Chuck Schumer, they have been itching for a war with Assad going back years. The CIA wants a war with Assad because our military-industrial complex, they want a war. You know why? Because a war is good business for them. It's hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars in extra lucrative contracts. And then you have that huge pipeline that the Saudis, the French, many top corporate globalists who are close to the president or close to the Republican Party, people like Dick Cheney, I could go on, Bill Richardson, that infamous Hillary hack, they want a huge pipeline right through Syria. In other words, follow the money. The Saudis want the pipeline. The French want the pipeline. The sheiks want the pipeline. The War Party wants the pipeline. And that's why they want Assad out. I am not going to die for some oil pipeline. American troops shouldn't be sent to war to die for some oil pipeline or some deranged Islamist fundamentalist terrorists. They're trying to concoct a cause for war, a casus belli. And even they can't tell us with a straight face that Assad was behind the chemical weapons attack. So if that's the case, I say no to war. Agree, disagree, 617-266-6868. Are we being lied into another war? I'll take more of your calls, I promise. 617-266-6868. But first, Secretary of State nominee Mike Pompeo is being grilled during his confirmation hearing, and in particular, he's being asked about the Russia investigation. Evan Heidenrich is in the WRKO newsroom. He has those details. What are they, Evan? 138 here on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer, cleaning up the liberal bull. I have a fresh column, a very important column. I've just posted it maybe an hour and a half ago, not an hour, 20 minutes ago, up on WRKO.com/Kuhner, Kuhner. Trump must fire Mueller. I lay the case out for why the president needs to take decisive action now before it's too late. So please go to WRKO.com/Kuhner, click on menu, click on Kuhner's Corner, which is the section where all my columns are, and there's my latest column, Trump must fire Mueller. Please read it, pass it on to as many people as possible. We need to get the truth out. Okay, President Trump has now announced that he's weighing all options and that a decision on bombing Syria will be made very, very soon. Should we bomb Syria in the wake of the chemical weapons attack, or should we wait and at least find out if Assad was definitively behind the chlorine gas attack? What say you? 617-266-6868. Lines are loaded. Glenn on Route 3. You're up next. Go ahead, Glenn.
Jeff, thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure.
Yeah, sorry. Not only are you well-read, Jeff, you have common sense. It's a rare trait.
Thank you. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you.
You're welcome. But after that, I got to say, logically thinking, I like to think I have an analytical mind. Assad, if he is guilty of the chemical attack, right, why stop once? Why not finish the job? Why not keep going? And he's at the end of this war. Why not just let it all out? Why do you only do it once? And then, not only that, if Putin brings Russian troops in, which he's doing, we're bringing our troops in, there's going to be more blood, Jeff. And I don't think Putin is going to back down. He is 3/4 into this war. I don't think he's backing down, Jeff.
Glenn, he's not going to back down. He can't back down. I mean, literally, Russians have died in Syria. He's all in on Syria. And look, it's not that I fear the Russians. I mean, look, they have nuclear weapons. You know, God forbid, we don't want a war with the Russians. Look, I'll be honest with you, Glenn. We have the greatest fighting force in the world. If it had to come down to a war between the United States and Russia, in a conventional war, I believe we would win. But we would take tremendous losses. And so the question you have to ask yourself is, what's in our national interest? Is it worth a major war? Now, before you get into a fight, to me, you always have to understand what's in it for me and what's in it for my enemy. And in this case, Putin has strategic interests in Syria. The naval base, the access to the Mediterranean, the fact that he has a huge problem with Muslims in his own country. And if Syria should fall to a Sunni fundamentalist state, that would be a bridge right up into the Caucasus, right into the guts, the soft underbelly of Russia. So it's not just Putin. Any Russian leader in the national interest of Russia could never allow an Islamist state on their doorstep. It would be akin, think about it, say if the Islamists, there's a civil war in Mexico, and you've got one secular dictator on one side, let's call him Assad, okay, who's defending the Christians of Mexico, and you've got Islamists on the other side. Well, there's no sensible U.S. president or leader outside of Barack Obama, I'm being serious, who would ever allow an Islamist state right on the border of the United States. I mean, it's geopolitical suicide. So the Russians are all in. So the question then is, what's in our interest? And outside of an oil pipeline that's going to benefit the globalist elites and not you and me, Glenn, we have no interest in Syria. So that's why my argument is stay out. And Glenn, let me tell you what the media is not reporting. The British media, to their credit, is Duma has now fallen. So the town where they launched that chemical weapons attack allegedly last week, it's fallen. Assad's forces have taken it because they're routing everybody now. So why would he need to launch chemical weapons on a town that was on the verge of falling anyway?
He doesn't. You know what else, Jeff? This faction of terrorists, whatever you want to call them, how do we know they didn't sacrifice 40 or 50 of his guys or children? How do we know whose side they're on?
Bingo. Glenn, thank you very much for that call. Look, we know they've done it before. They've done that we know this for a fact. They have used chemical weapons on their own people to try to bring in Western military intervention. So just common sense. Look, okay? You're fighting Assad and the Russians. All of your strongholds have now fallen. The country's 90% Assad. You're in a few pockets of resistance left. They were literally Duma, the army of Islam, okay? These Sunni terrorists that were entrenched in Duma. They were encircled by Syrian forces and the Russians. You're being pounded from the air, from the ground. I mean, they're being leveled. Suddenly, all of a sudden, Shazam! There's a chemical weapons attack. And guess what? The cameras just happen to be there. I mean, the footage is disgusting. You see these poor kids. It really is. It tears at your heartstrings. It's revolting. But Shazam! The cameras happen to be there. And as they're rinsing down the kids, desperately trying to save them, with foam coming out of their mouth, the cameras are zeroing in on the kids in their underwear. Basically, they're almost naked. Okay, they're in their underwear, fighting for their lives. And then the footage gets blasted out to the media all over the world. And CNN goes crazy with it, and MSNBC goes crazy with it, and the BBC goes crazy with it, and Fox goes crazy with it, and before you know it, 24 hours later, we have to bomb Syria. How awfully convenient for the rebels. Just that camera crew, how did they just happen to be there? Oh, wow. It smells like a false flag operation. And now Duma has fallen, so even protecting that town, forget it, because now Assad's overrun that. So what's going on here is obvious. Assad, essentially now, he has won the civil war. Okay? The civil war is over. Assad and Putin have won. So now that ISIS has been defeated, what I think the war party wants is to say, you know what? We need a pretext. We need a smokescreen, a justification to go in and level Assad. Just level him and snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. Now, I'm sorry, but we're in Iraq, we're in Libya, we're in Yemen, we're in Afghanistan. We've got 29,000 troops on the border with North Korea. How many places, how many wars you want us to fight? Our boys are dying in Afghanistan. Some of them don't even have enough bullets to defend themselves. And now we want another major war? With a country, we are $21 trillion in debt? Like, we need a war now, like we need a hole in the head. And Tucker made a very brave point last night, and I want to give him his due. Some of the people that have been backing these rebels, it's not just the Saudis and the Turks. It's been the Chinese. No one wants to talk about this. China has been covertly supplying and funding weapons and giving money to some of these Islamist rebels. Why? If I'm China, the one thing I want, I would, even if I'm a communist, I would pray to God for, have America and Russia at war. My two biggest rivals, and let them bleed each other and slaughter each other as we just stand on the sidelines and we get bigger and bigger and stronger and stronger. This is a setup from the get-go. And that's why I'm urging the president, stay out of Syria. You're going to regret it. It's going to be your Vietnam. 617-266-6868. Eddie, no, let's go to Bobby in Saugus. Forgive me. You're up next. Go ahead, Bobby.
Hey, Jeff. Is behind the chemical weapon attack. We should not attack Syria. No clear and present danger to the United States. Yes, it's awful. The barrel bomb attacks have been awful. The machine gunnings have been awful. But there's no clear and present danger to the United States. We should stay out of it. And don't you find it odd that just a couple of weeks after Trump announces we're going to pull out of Syria, this chemical attack happens to drag us back in?
Bobby, it wasn't even a couple weeks. It was less than a week. It was less than a week, Bobby. It was 6 days after he announced it.
This smells to high heaven, and I hope Donald Trump wakes up to it.
Bobby, thank you very much for that call. Look, and to piggyback off of Bobby, let me ask you again, just objectively. Look, I don't like Assad. I don't like dictators. I really don't. Dictators have done horrible things to my family, okay? I am a small R Republican and a small D Democrat all the way. So I'm not a big fan of Assad. But facts are facts. And just objectively, I want to ask you this, objectively. Has Assad threatened the United States? No, he hasn't. Has Assad attacked the United States? No, he hasn't. Well, if he hasn't threatened us, and he hasn't attacked us, and we have no vital national interest in Syria, what the hell are we doing there? I mean, look, I bleed red, white, and blue. I love this country. Please don't get me wrong. But we're starting to look a little bit now like an international bully. Look, there's a lot of places around the world where you have nasty civil wars and all kinds of atrocities. But if a country hasn't attacked us or hasn't threatened us, and we have no vital interest there, well, now we're being a global cop. And I'm telling you, the world resents a global cop. And frankly, we can't even afford to be a global cop. So I'm looking at this, and all I see is nothing but one downside after another. And I keep asking this one question: what's in it for us? I know what the Saudis get out of this. I know what the Turks get out of this. I know what the Israelis get out of this. I know what the Chinese get out of this. I know what the globalists with their oil pipeline, they're going to get rich off of this. I understand what everybody gets out of this. But what do we get? A big, fat zero, if we're lucky. Matt in Newburyport, you're up next. Go ahead, Matt.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi.
So I'm going to rifle off a little rant real quick because I know you're short on time.
Go ahead.
So, because I never thought of it the way that you put it earlier with the Sunni-backed powers, strategically, basically the conspiracy thing. So is the insinuation here that this might possibly go down in the history books as the Tonkin Gulf incident of our time? And the reason I'm asking for is, do you see a connection between the fact that despite the less extreme hypocrisy of trying to distract everyone, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain with the, false Trump collusion when in reality it was Hillary the whole time, don't you think it's a little bit ham-fisted of Russia, who is one of the greatest in the world at espionage, to use a neurotoxin that only they can produce to assassinate someone, to create tension conveniently before Assad, seemingly with no motive, gassed his own people again? Don't you think it's just a little bit too odd and conspiratorial?
Well, look, Matt, what I would just say is this. It's very obvious to me. I don't know if it's the Gulf of Tonkin, because the Gulf of Tonkin led to a major war in Vietnam. If it's just a few pinprick airstrikes, like what we did last April, right? You launch 60 Tomahawk missiles, you make your point, you smash up an airbase. Luckily, no Russians were killed. It's not the end of the world. It's not the Gulf of Tonkin.
What I mean is not the deep state, but like the globalists, are they really trying to start a war for their own good?
Well, look, I can tell you this. I think you're mentioning Salisbury now, right? In England, that the use of chemical weapons against that double agent and his daughter.
Right. So
okay, what's happened now is
the possibility that it wasn't Russia and that somebody.
Oh no, I don't believe it was Russia. I'll tell you why. You have scientists in Britain who have now admitted that the agent that they said was used, Novichok, was not Novichok. They've confirmed it. So it wasn't a Soviet nerve agent. This is official. So they've been blaming Putin, claiming it was a specific nerve agent, when we now found out it wasn't. So you have to ask yourself, Matt, you have to ask yourself an obvious question. Who benefits from the Salisbury chemical weapons attack? Who benefits from the chemical weapons attack in Duma in Syria? There's only one group, the war party. There's only one group. I would say draw your own conclusions. I think the evidence is pretty obvious.
how do you do damage control after all this diplomat expulsions and sanctions and everybody, backing Russia into a corner? Is there any such possible thing?
Well, look, Matt, here's what we need to do.
News from their Facebook feeds.
I hear you. No, I hear you, Matt. Listen, here's what we need to do. Even with all of this manipulation, the public is still against it. So it hasn't worked. So what we need to do is say, let Congress vote. Just let Congress vote. You want to go to war? Constitution says you need authorization from Congress. Go to Congress. Congress will say no. You know why? Because the American people say no. 158 here on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer, 617-266-6868. Okay, my friends, the president now is speaking in the Rose Garden outside of the White House. He is now saying, quote unquote, the administration is confident, that's the word that they're using, confident that Bashar Assad used chemical weapons in that attack in Syria. He is also now strongly signaling that action will be coming over the next 24, 48, maybe over the weekend, 72 hours. So it does appear now that we are going closer and closer and closer to some kind of a war or bombing campaign in Syria. And so my question now to you is this. When the bombs start falling, will you rally around the president, or is it time to join an anti-war movement? What should Trump's supporters do? Back the president once the bombs fall, or say, get out of Syria, give peace a chance? 617-266-6868. Your calls next.
The voice of Boston is you. 680 WRKO Boston, 100.7 WZLX HD2 Boston, an iHeart radio station.